my friends, let me introduce you guys for the very first time, Mrs. Eve Gracie.
Thank you for that nice introduction.
You guys, so for those who haven't heard, we got married.
We did. Babe, not on camera.
Listen, you guys, and on our wedding day, have this whole honeymoon planned. We made an oath. We made a promise.
I made him promise.
She made me promise that we would have our amazing honeymoon at an undisclosed tropical island location. But above everything else, we would not work during our honeymoon. We have now officially broken that promise.
Only one day left though, we're leaving tomorrow.
Yes.
So we did pretty good.
But here's
doesn't
the
really
deal.
work, though.
It is.
It's not.
It's work because it's going to change lives.
It's pretty important.
And of course, we both agreed, but that doesn't change the fact that this is our first official broken promise as a married couple.
But for a good cause.
And hopefully the last. So it's something we've been talking about for a long time, and due to all the free time we've had here on this amazing honeymoon,
Had a lot of good conversations.
in between all the jet skiing, scuba diving, swimming with stingrays and sharks, snorkeling, stand-up paddleboarding,
Paddleboard yoga.
paddleboard yoga,
Yoga on a paddleboard.
helicoptering, just all the amazing things you can possibly do on an exotic island location.
Massages.
Yeah, that's natural, of course. Besides all of that, in between all of those amazing, wonderful adventures we got to involve ourselves in, we had a lot of time to talk. And we talked about a lot of things, marriage things, and, future baby Gracie things, and things of that nature. But one thing that surfaced was a discussion that we've had before, and it was very, very important to us. And it's now back, and we feel that this discussion is one we qualify to have. More than ever before, because we are a married couple, and it's a married couple's talk.
It is.
And it's one talk that we want to share with you guys because of how many people we think can benefit from this talk, and it has to do with women and men and jiu-jitsu academies and the misunderstandings and the glitches that exist there in training academies around the world.
Well, yeah, and it started by us talking about just how many women we now have at the academy, which we've grown. I mean, the number of women training when I started, which was over 6 years ago, I mean, it was like, if I was in the class, there was maybe one other woman training, maybe, and that was it, at the time. And now we've got classes that are, half women. Some of our combatives classes are half of the students in there are women, which is amazing. And now we're getting more and more blue belts, which means there's more women in Master Cycle. And
yeah, it's very normal now
really
to have, 10, 12, 15 women in a group class of, 45, 50 men. 20, 25, 30% ratios are not uncommon. And it's amazing. And what was the secret to that? Should we tell them?
Yes, we should.
The secret to getting more women in an academy is to have entry-level, women's-only programs. Because a lot of women, as soon as they think about jiu-jitsu, what do they think about? MMA, UFC, get your face punched into a chain link fence, bloody cuts, broken bones. So they don't want anything to do with jiu-jitsu because the connotation they have is the one that, exists on TV.
Well, it's also the same reason why some men don't start training jiu-jitsu, because there's this kind of like, for the outsider who doesn't understand the benefits of jiu-jitsu and the amazingness of jiu-jitsu, what do they see and what do they think?
It's weird. Two people laying on top of each other, rolling around in pajamas. So the moral of the story is we're getting the women in the building. Gracie Academy, and certified training centers all over the country are getting women in the academy. The question is, once they're in there, we're having some challenges. And it's associated with, like Eve mentioned, this inherent awkwardness of two people grappling who may have never met with each other, and a man and a woman who may have never met before. That's naturally awkward and uncomfortable to some people. And how do we manage that to where women can benefit from the training opportunity and not be restricted because of this?
Right, and it's one thing to get women in the door and to get them to start training, but everyone knows, women or men, once you get your blue belt, it's like a whole nother, like all of a sudden you go and start swimming with sharks.
Yeah.
And so how do you keep women training is the question. And because of this kind of awkwardness, I mean, I know from personal experience, there are times that it's like, all right, you know, we're learning a new technique. All right, everybody partner up, or let's start sparring, and everyone finds a partner, and I'm like, hey, okay, anybody? No? All right. And then I'm standing there by myself, and there's no one, and then I finally see a straggler walk in, and I'm like, hey, do you have a partner yet? And then I get a partner. But I mean, this is not like a one time, this happens literally every single time we partner up. And, you know, I know it's not just me, right? I know this is happening to women all over the world, all over not just at the Gracie Academy, everywhere.
Right.
And it just, there has to be something done about it. Not only for the benefit of women, but for men as well. Right.
And for the academies, and at the end of the day, what I always think about is, one thing we all agree on and we all know for sure is that Jiu-jitsu, as we practice it, was created by Grandmasters Carlos and Edu to empower the smaller, weaker individual against a larger, more athletic opponent. And if that is the truth, which it is, then it's fair to say that there is no segment of society that is in more need of and would benefit more from practicing jiu-jitsu than women. Because for men, two men get in a fight at a bar, you know what I'm saying, there's a chance you might fight someone your size, a little bigger, a little smaller, just people act stupid and egos get puffed and they want to get crazy. But if a woman ever has to defend herself in a real threat situation, there is pretty much certainty that the male assailant in that case, the bad guy in that case, is going to be more athletic and just naturally more comfortable with that closeness and that grappling and that wrestling and that thing that he grows up as a boy and as a man. Chances are very strong that that's going to be more comfortable and an advantage for the opponent, which means women need jiu-jitsu almost more than men do in some ways, in some cases. So if we aren't creating academies and training procedures and you know, situations and habits in the academy amongst training partners that are not fully conducive and constructive for the sake of, you know, women getting the same benefits from jiu-jitsu as men do, then what are we doing? What are we doing? So that's why we decided to make this video, is to help, you know, discuss some of the misconceptions.
Yeah, it all comes down to restricting beliefs.
Right.
Beliefs that men have about women that are training, and beliefs that women have about men that are training.
That are preventing them from creating the most opportune, the best opportunities for one another and the best possible training situations. And these restricting beliefs are doing exactly that. They're restricting people from benefiting as much as they can.
Let's start with the men and kind of their fears and their...
Yeah, well, I mean, once you get a woman in the building, once you get a woman into an academy to train, which is the first and most challenging task, you got that, right? A good YouTube video can do that, a good intro seminar can do that, a good class, they're in there. Now it's a matter of keeping them. And them having productive and fun training sessions with other training partners, including men, is of course the most important thing. The question is, why don't men ask women, most men don't ask women to train with them, right? For a sparring session or a technique breakdown or practice of a technique. Why wouldn't they? Because I noticed that as well. I'm watching as the instructor. As the instructor who runs the academy, I train with everybody, men, women. I see the women not having a partner, so I'll roll with them, Eve, anybody else included. But why don't more men ask more women to train? And knowing the nature of men and the nature of the academies and how those things kind of work and the partnering situation works there, it's fear of rejection. Ultimately, the man does not want to ask a woman and say, hey Eve, do you want to train? And you'd be like, no, and then leave. And this is the same fear of rejection that exists when, you know, you're picking teams for dodgeball. It's the same fear of rejection that exists when a man is asking a woman on a date. It's the same fear of rejection. Or friendship. It's the same fear of rejection when you ask someone to help you for anything. Like, hey, can you help me with this? Or, you know, it's the same fear of rejection people fear when they get up and speak in front of a crowd. Huge fear for people speaking in front of an audience. Why?
Rejection.
Rejection of the audience. What you have to say is not good enough. So, men don't ask women to train because they're fearful that the women are going to say no. And they think that the women are going to say no because they see the women as interpreting their invitation to train differently than other men.
Right.
When I'm a man and I ask another man to train, if he doesn't want to roll with me or he has another partner, it's like, whatever, it's all good. But when I'm a man and I ask another woman to train, although my intentions might be 100% to train and to be a productive training session, I fear that she might interpret my invitation to train as hitting on her. In other words, I want to be with her. There's an underlying objective there beyond just training jiu-jitsu in that class. And in that regard, if all men think that all women are going to interpret their training invitations as, having this, an invitation for something more than training or even a sexual connotation the least bit, if that were true, it makes total sense why people don't ask you to train.
Right. Yeah.
Imagine that. Imagine if someone really was asking with, hidden objectives and hidden motives to ask Eve to train. That would be very stupid, obviously.
Yeah.
But that's not the case. It's not happening.
It's not. The reality is, any woman who is training jiu-jitsu, number one, and who's signed up for classes in a co-ed environment where there's obviously probably a majority men, it doesn't even cross our mind that a man who's asking us to train is hitting on us. Because why are we there? We're there to train, we're there to learn. So we're hoping for somebody to ask us to be able to partner up and just go through the motions or spar or whatever, because that's what we're there for. We're not there at a bar trying to get picked up on by a guy, right? It's a very different situation. So it is literally the last thing I would ever think.
In your 6 years, have you ever felt someone ask you to train and interpret it as them hitting on you?
Never once. And I think it's because, why are we there? Like once you put your gi on, it's just a different environment. We're all just training partners. Like there's no men, women, you know what I mean? Like that's the way I look at it personally.
Right, so isn't it crazy?
However, yeah.
You don't see anything sexual about it. You don't see anything like, oh, he's trying to hit on me. There's zero connotation there. Yet the number one probably for men that prevents them from reaching out and just treating the women and inviting them for normal training like they would any other man is an assumption of a connotation and an idea and an interpretation that is totally non-existent in the minds of the women who put on the gi or who step on the mat to train jiu-jitsu.
If anything, I feel like it's a sign of respect for a man to go out of his way and to ask me to train with him. And hey, do you have a partner? It's like, oh wow, great. Finally somebody who respects me enough to ask me to train with him. That's great. It's the last thing that we're looking at. So that's a myth that must be dispelled, because if it's holding men back from asking women to train, it has to be just done.
Think about that. If it's holding men back from asking women to train, think about how something so non-existent and imaginative and falsified is preventing women from getting the training that they so absolutely need. So you heard it from me. If you ask a female training partner under my class, under my guidance, under my academy, or seminar, whatever, if you ask a female to train jiu-jitsu, never will I accuse you of doing it for the wrong reason.
Right.
And you heard it from Eve that she has never, and no one she's ever trained with, has ever interpreted or taken it for more than what it actually is, which is just an invitation to train jiu-jitsu.
Yes.
So if that's a fear, don't let it hold you guys back.
Now let's take the look at the flip side, because it's obviously a two-way street. It's not just us sitting around and waiting for a man to ask us to train. As women, we need to ask our training partners. If we want a training partner, we need to ask them to, hey, do you want to partner up? Do you want to train? And whether they're a man or woman. And so I think that women sometimes are fearful of asking men for the exact same reasons, meaning they fear that they almost may not be looked at as a good enough training partner for the man. Like they're almost fearful that when they ask him to train, in his head he's going to be like, oh, I got to train a girl again. Like, I'm looking for, they want a fiercer or more stronger or better training partner. And
Not
I think,
the case.
yeah, and I think that's like kind of what a lot of women feel is like, oh, I don't want to ask him if he's not enthusiastic about training with me. If he's doing me, if I'm a charity case for him. Right.
So what Eve is saying is that women will not ask to train with men out of fear that they're not good enough as training partners for these men. And what's great as a man, and having seen women grow through jiu-jitsu and having seen...
that happens especially when you're first starting, when you're like kind of a fresh blue belt. You
Right.
know that you're like, okay, I got a lot of work ahead of me, right?
Well, here's the thing. You're the same as any new blue belt. There's no difference between female new blue belts and male new blue belts in terms of technical prowess and ability and understanding of the art. It doesn't exist. So women out there know that 100% we invite you to invite us to train. Of course, most women that I train with or that any academy students train with, normally they're smaller, they're lighter physically. They're just as technical, if not better, because they've always had to overcome these physical challenges. So they figure out ways of doing techniques and things in a way that is more energy efficient than a lot of the male students who climb through the rankings. But what's wonderful about training with women is that it really does allow you to remove the strength from the equation and just let it be purely technical, you know? And that's why I love rolling with Eve, is because it's very much of a opportunity for me to try new techniques, to put myself into holes, let her try a choke, slip myself out of it. So it's a low risk in the sense that, you know, I'm not gonna be getting smashed on by someone who's 50, 70 pounds heavier than me, and where I'm only using my bread and butter techniques and I can't explore and try new things. So if you want a very technical roll with a lot of movement, there's no one better than the women who are climbing the rankings and learning the art. So there's no doubt that men appreciate the opportunity to roll with a woman who is, you know, eager to learn, eager to listen, and eager to collaborate more than listen, eager to collaborate with ideas, and ultimately allow these technical fluid rolls that can happen. So I'm telling you, I have more fluid rolls with a lot of women who train, more so on a general, if you add up all the averages, than with more of the men, because a lot of the men, they're so reliant on their strength that they just kind of get clunky and they get stuck certain places.
So women, basically, the bottom line is that while we're thinking like, oh, he's not going to be, you know, he wants a better training partner. No, men should be so lucky as to have us ask them to roll, right? Meaning that we're obviously just as technical, sometimes if not more.
I think that another reason why some of the men don't ask women is because they think that women only want to roll with other women.
Right.
You know, a lot of men because
they see women only
because of these first two reasons, right? These falsified interpretations of the other intentions.
Yes.
Because of those, typically men and women don't train as often as they should.
Right.
Now that these barriers exist, their existence is perpetuating their existence. You see?
Yeah.
So it's just important that you know, men know that, you know, women who are on a mat, and I know this as the instructor, and I've heard it from Eve, women are there because they want to roll with men.
Right, or a good training partner, and that's really what it comes down to, is that we're not biased against men or women who we train with. It's not that we don't want to train with men, we just want good training partners. And unfortunately, there are some undesirables, I guess that's what we'll call them. And so there are some men that we don't want to train with.
Some women too.
And some women too that we don't want to train with.
Yeah.
And so we're going to label these undesirables, but we've broken them down into four categories, and I'm sure you can identify with these.
Everyone has experienced every one of these undesirables.
Everyone knows one of these undesirables, but we have to mention them because you may not even know that you're one of them, but you should know. And now just take a look into yourself.
Number one undesirable, and probably, anyways, it's the smashers.
Yeah.
And the smashers, who are they? They're the people who have a strength advantage, you know, when they smash and they become very aggressive. And they literally just roll like, you know, like as if you only exist to be a grappling dummy for their smashing and their aggressive movements.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, and this is especially undesirable for women, obviously, because if I were to come to class and just like want to have an arm wrestling contest with everybody, I would lose, which is okay, you know, like that's understandable, that's okay. But there's a certain point where it just becomes, it's like, all right, enough, like the smashing and just using strength and weight and crushing, it's not even productive. And that's the problem, is that if you get too many of these smashers and too many people who just want to overpower you with strength, it becomes unproductive because I'm not even able to, especially as a blue belt.
Even to try something.
You know,
you at least want to try a couple techniques.
You want to be able to try, you want to be able to grow, you want to be able to move and flow, and that just can't happen when someone is doing that. And why do they do that?
Because they can, and because they've gotten smashed on, and therefore they want to pay it forward to someone else. And typically, when a man rolls with a woman, he certainly has the physical advantage in most cases. But these guys who do that typically will do that to any person, not just a woman. They'll do it to anyone who have the advantage.
There are sometimes the guys who actually will do it specifically because they're a woman, and almost like, I can't let this woman beat me, or I can't let her tap me, or even get a sweep or do anything. So sometimes they'll actually go more aggro because you're a woman than even if they were training with somebody. Kind of, it's like, all right, I could accept it if I lost to this person, but I can't accept if I lose to her. And so clearly this is an undesirable thing, because what does that mean? It means they're emotional about it.
Sure. Yeah. So then we move on to the stenchers. Undesirable category number 2. And this doesn't need too much explaining. It's just people who just don't have the highest hygiene standards and cleanliness standards and gi cleaning standards. So just don't be that person, you know, clean your gi.
Pretty undesirable. And and like,
clean your gi, take a shower.
Everyone sweats, everyone gets down, but at the end of the day, showers, cleaning gis, not having too much chest hair, just everywhere.
But my chest is clean, you're all natural.
Appreciate
Listen,
that, thank you.
But at the end of the day, yeah, it's just, and I think it's nothing wrong with people who have chest hair. Okay, let's be very clear. It's just it's almost a matter of you have to, as much as what you are, it's how you roll with what you are. You know what I'm saying? And like there's just whether you guys know what I'm talking about. It's how you manage your body and your hygiene and your situations when you're rolling, and you can do those in ways that are respectful and considerate of the person you're rolling with, or you can not. You know what I'm saying?
But realistically, it's not just like, oh, this person smells. It's distracting. Like it can really be distracting to the point where you're like, I can't even focus.
Yeah, let me just give a random exaggerated example. If you weigh and it doesn't have nothing specific here, but let's say you weigh 320 pounds, and you're hairy as a grizzly bear, and it's a no-gi day, and your t-shirt, your dry fit has rolled up to your chest, and therefore your belly is exposed with the grizzly fur on it. Don't go north-south and place your belly button on someone's face and try to drown them with your belly button in your body, okay? Don't do that. Like, that's all I'm saying is that, it's one thing to be a big guy who's hairy, who sweats a lot. It's another thing to not understand how to roll in a way that that takes that into consideration, especially when the person that you're rolling with, you have full control over physically because you're so much stronger, and you're a smasher and a stencher. You're on everybody's blacklist, not just women. You're on everyone's blacklist.
But not just because you're
weight or hair. No. There are some
how you train and how you move and how you
There are some heavyweight hairy guys who I love to roll with, who are my brothers, my jiu-jitsu brothers, and who are very considerate of their bodies and their hygiene, and they do what they can, and there are no problems at all for anyone. So
the third one, we call them the Senseis, and these are the training partners that literally, you'll be sparring and you won't even get to spar because the entire time they are explaining what you can do, what you should do, what you should have done. Oh, here's this move that has nothing to do with what you learned today. Basically, we're all for helping, and we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that later, about the desirables. We're all for somebody helping us. But when it becomes to the point where it's almost like a way of them getting out of rolling with you just to explain every single thing that you've done, and it kind of takes away from the experience,
and that's undesirable for anyone, and Eve said it, we're all for helping. In other words, there's a point where helping becomes too much. Because here's the deal, jiu-jitsu is something that has to be discovered. It cannot be translated, it cannot be given, it has to be discovered. We can give you 50%, the other half has to be figured out on your own. So that being said, if every single movement of the grapple, they're stopping you to tell you what you did wrong and what you should be doing right, you don't even know if what they're saying is true because you haven't felt what wrong is supposed to feel like.
And sometimes they're almost doing it to kind of show their power. It's like, oh, here, little one, let me show you the way. And it sometimes just feels a little bit demeaning. You know, now, not always. Again, we'll talk about the desirables
later. There's no doubt that there's a balance.
Super helpful training partners.
We're just talking about the senseis, okay? And no offense to all the true senseis out there, but we just thought it was a good term to describe. In jiu-jitsu, we don't really use that term sensei, and we needed a term that started with the letter S that that indicated someone who just talked too much during the roll. And that was the term we came up with. So then we move on to, undesirable training partner category number 4. And we call them the snipers. And these are the guys who...
They literally only want to train with women. Meaning they literally sit there and scope out when a woman is available and they will only train with them. Now, let's explain this a little further because it's like, okay, you guys are contradicting yourself, right? First you're saying men need to ask women, now you're saying men shouldn't only ask women.
Can't ask women too much,
But there's something about it. It's like, if you're not training with men, you're literally only training with women, it's a little bit of a red flag. Because I'm going to need you to just, it's like, okay, if you enjoy rolling with, have a woman training partner you like, that's great. But when you just sit around and wait, and then usually these snipers are also the senseis. They're also the senseis because they just wait around to go, I want to feel like the teacher today, so I'm going to find a woman who, maybe doesn't know as much as I do, and I'm going to show her a little, trick here or there.
So all I'm saying is everything in moderation. You know what I'm saying? Men should ask women to train, but like we're saying, there are some...
It just is interpreted a little creepy.
Yeah, naturally, if nobody says anything to anyone, everyone just looks at that, and someone just watches the training session through a camera and sees one person only asking women to train, they're going to question it. So again, this has never led to anything crazy or any kind of major sexual anything. Nothing. It's just a little weird.
A little weird.
Snipers.
So smashers, stenchers, senseis, and snipers.
Don't be one of
Don't
those.
be one of them.
Okay.
Now, we can't just sit around and talk about the undesirables without talking about the desirables.
Right.
We
So
have to talk
what do you
about,
want to be? But first of all, be the opposite of all of those.
Yes. Be the opposite.
Starting
of those.
with what?
Yeah. So starting with the desirables. These are the ones that women. Because let's. I'm just gonna give you a little insight right now. We will literally go in the locker room after training and be like, okay, like we're trying to help each other out. So we're like, so and so, don't train with him. You know what I mean? Like if you had a bad training experience, we're gonna share it with other women because we don't want them to have to experience the same thing that we did.
Out of protection for them.
Yes. Now conversely, we'll say, oh my gosh, I trained with so and so today. He was an awesome training partner. You should definitely seek him out next time if you can. We'll say those things. So you want to be desirable. Now I think number one is being a good, challenging training partner.
Interesting.
Challenging in the right way. Because as women, we don't want to be like, oh, she's, let me go super easy on her and, be very careful. We want someone that knows how to challenge us, but again, in the right way, without...
Right. So the opposite of smasher is not grappling dummy, Bubba number 2.
Yes.
The opposite of smasher is intense, good training partner who knows the proper level of resistance and challenge. And I think a great way to explain it is, when I spar, I'm only Rener and Gracie like 5% of the time. And by that I mean, I'm only full Rener and Gracie, black belt, full tilt, bring all the fire I can with my training partner. Basically, when I roll with Hidon or Halek or, Lyoto or, T-City, Alex, these other black belts, the top level guys against whom I need to bring all my tools to be effective against them. So that's when I'm on full tilt. But when I roll with the brown belt, guess what I do? I go brown belt stripe 2 on them. And when I roll with Eve, I go, blue belt stripe 3, stripe 4, purple belt sometimes to make her life miserable a little bit. But the point is, wherever they are, I do this. And then throughout the roll, I occasionally do like this. Boop, and then I come right back. So I'll make a little, give a little, take a little, give a little, take a lot, give a little, take a lot. You know what I'm saying? But I'm definitely creating opportunities.
But what does that do for the other person?
It gives hope, it makes it productive, it gives them a chance to try something and see the light of day while they're rolling and have an offensive opportunity. It encourages progress, right? It encourages movement and I'm not just going to smash you side mount, put my belly on your face and just lay on you and suffocate you and just smash. No, I want to create movement, I want to create a productive roll. A roll that is productive is one that benefits both training partners. Say it again.
Say it again.
A role that is productive is one that benefits both training partners. Now, some people might say, yeah, there's a lot to benefit from being in the bottom of my side mount with my belly in your face, smashing you so you can't breathe. Learn how to survive in just uncomfortable situations. You're right. I can't argue that. There is some benefit to that. But if you do that every single day, the benefit will be overshadowed by the discouragement that is caused, and someone will quit because they won't train. And then was it beneficial? Tell them.
I don't think so.
Boom.
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
yeah, the right amount of challenge. And there's so many, we have actually a lot of really good training partners like that at the academy.
Yes.
That are like Danny Trujillo is a brown belt, but knows how to whenever you roll with him, you still feel like you're challenged, but he could easily literally
the best training partner is one who challenges you, against whom you think he's trying.
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? Like Danny's probably the most desirable training partner in the whole academy, and I hope he sees this because it's true, and everyone talks about him, and whether you're man or woman, you like to roll with him because he goes hard, but never to the sacrifice of safety, and in a way that always makes you feel like he's really giving you 100%, and even if it's a new blue belt or, an advanced white belt or whatever, or a purple belt, he always can make himself perfectly dynamic so that they feel like they're really fighting someone, but really he's bringing himself to their level. And if they catch him during that process, he's like, man, that was a good catch.
Yes.
Man, and you're like, wait a minute, did I just catch this guy or did she let me? You don't know. That's the best training partner, okay? So you want to be the Danny. You want to be that guy. And there are many others as well,
Yeah.
But the bottom line is you want to be the training partner. Now, here's the challenge. And this is a little bit of a tangent, but it's critical. The reason more Dannys don't exist in other academies around the world is because, believe it or not, there exist academies where if a brown belt like Danny were to get tapped out by an advanced blue belt or a purple belt, the instructor will walk over to him, kick him with his foot, take off his belt, switch it, give it to the other guy and get the blue belt, give it to Danny, and take Danny's belt and give it to the blue belt. Swap the belts. This is not a myth. This is real. There are academies. Now, and there are varying degrees of that, where another instructor might say, hey, what's wrong with you? Why did you let him catch? Why did you get caught like that? Danny, why did you get caught? Condemning him. When in fact, all he was trying to do was create a session that was productive for both people. And even if he was really caught by a purple belt, who had a good day and figured out, and Danny made a mistake during his exploration stage, guess what? It's okay. It's better that he be caught in the academy than on the street.
Yes, more at keepitplayful.com.
Hedon Gracie, 100% mindset. Yes. So the moral of that story is, I'm just saying, it starts from the top down.
Yes.
And if the instructors are encouraging, giving your belt, switch with him, it makes sense why everyone's trying to kill or be killed, and there cannot be more Dannys around the world.
Yes.
But if the instructors listen to this video and understand that you got to create an environment where giving an arm is okay for the sake of the newer, the less trained training partner, you'll create a lot of Dannys.
Excitement and movement and progress and wanting to come back the next day. It's great.
This is only if you want to have, over 500 students at your school. If you want to have 60 students, all MMA fighters who want to fight in the UFC one day, then you don't need to have this mindset.
Next video.
Kill or be killed.
We'll talk about.
Got it.
Yes. So second desirable, very super important, is unemotional. Because here's the thing, that as a woman who trains with men, you can really, if anyone's emotional, it's going to come out when they're training with women. Because if they're getting frustrated, it's one thing to get frustrated. It's like, all right, this guy's about my same size, about same rank, whatever, if I lose. But when a woman is starting to, does something or one-ups them or even taps them, you really can see the emotion come out if someone's an emotional training partner. And I just feel like that's when someone's emotional is number one, when it gets dangerous. Number two, when they turn into smashers. And it's just not fun because it's almost like it takes the enjoyment out of the learning progress. And it's like, why would you think that I wouldn't be able to, I learn the same techniques you do, I train as much as you do, why wouldn't you?
It's a little offensive if they get emotional. Yeah, so what's wrong with you?
Yeah.
Well, here's what's crazy is that, once again, even for men, who are the least desirables are the emotional ones.
Yes.
So the best training partners amongst men only are the unemotional ones. I can roll a heat on like two grizzly bears trying to kill each other, but as soon as my forearm accidentally bumps his lip and it's bleeding, I'm like, oh shoot, my bad, bro, you all right? It wasn't like, yeah, you deserve that because we were all heated and great. No, you can be 100% intent on rolling intense chokes, kill or be killed, and then say, hey, are you cool? My bad, I didn't mean to bump you right there. Let's keep going, Papa. You see? And that just goes to show that emotions, that someone's emotional when safety starts to take a second place to the outcome of the role.
Who's good at that? Academy Gilbert.
Gilbert.
A great one. He just flows and rolls and but there's no emotion. He's a great
no emotion.
partner.
He'll roll hard, you know what I'm saying? And I think he's a smaller guy too. He's one of the smaller male students, blue belt, really technical. And he probably has, since he's always going with bigger guys too, you know what I'm saying? It's very easy for him to lose control because he's probably getting controlled a lot by these bigger guys. So it's something that was, that he got from early on, and he's definitely spreading that with everyone he rolls with. So congratulations, bro. Unemotional.
Yes. And the third desirable is helpful, of course, right? So now again, you're like,
don't be the sensei.
Yes, so we talked about senseis in the last one, but yet we still want helpful. But there is a fine line. There's a fine line to everything in this world, but there is definitely a fine line.
Give some examples.
Yes. So when I think of helpful, I think of Jay Wong, right? He's a purple belt, super advanced purple belt, and always just know he'll roll with you and you're just sparring, but then something will come up and he'll break down exactly what you just did and what you could have done and throw out some gold technique that you'd never even seen before. It's really useful and helpful and it's applicable to the situation. And you're like, okay, number one, I know that this guy's on my team and he's trying to help me out, but not in the sense of him just wanting to say, look what I know and be my student.
Yeah.
It's a very genuine willingness to help and to give information that he has and that he knew that because somebody probably helped him along the way. Yes, and that's what it is.
The question is, so I think they get it. There's a good helpful. The question, when does it cross the line to sensei? You see, and I think that the good helpers know that line. They know the line, which is, think about it. If every single thing you do, imagine if Eve woke up in the morning and then from start to bedtime, everything she did, I tried to show her a better way how to do it. Are you serious?
Imagine. Okay. Maybe not everything. He
Yeah,
doesn't
edit
tell me
that
how to
part
brush
out.
my teeth.
Listen, imagine, no. Here's what the truth is, everything she does, there is a better technique. And I'm slowly introducing them. Here's the deal. But like her jiu-jitsu, every single move could be done more efficiently. The thing is this, if I were to you woke up, okay, good morning. Now when you step out of bed right now, lean to your left foot down, right foot down, stand up, knees 90 degrees, posture when you get up, good, chest up, shoulders back, nice.
Yes,
Walk straight, chin.
We get it.
Imagine if I told her all the advice in one day. That's the problem. I'm going to give her all the advice.
Yeah, and it's just discouraging, and at some point you're like, let me just move on with my day. Like, let me just learn on my own.
Now, if throughout the course of the day, we're getting to the thing, we had the academy, we get home at the end of the night, we're looking to make the nice, you know what I'm saying, amazing apple smoothie drink, you know what I'm saying, trying to put it down, apples, we're peeling the apples, and we're peeling it, and then, she's peeling it, and she doesn't have the rhythm of the wrist, and she forgets to debugify the apple. I will tell her, with passion, with sincerity, and she will debugify. And she'll appreciate it. She's down for some good advice. But you can't give all the advice in one day. So Jay just understands when he rolls what the most important advice is to give, some critical concepts, and let you be on with your roll.
So now let's talk about some tips, some action steps. Like what can we do
actually
from now? Now that we've talked
Right.
about this, the desirables, the undesirables, why this is happening, what can we do now?
Well, first of all, how do you ask for a good training? How do you ask for a training partner?
Yes.
Assuming you're someone you want to roll
Yeah, and assuming that we all know now, it's all been put on the table, that there's some discomfort in asking, meaning we're a little bit scared to be rejected. So you have to ask in a way that almost makes rejection okay. And I've kind of mastered this because I'm afraid of rejection myself, and yet I have to ask people to train all the time. So what I normally do is I say, hey, like everyone's partnered up, have you found a partner yet? Have you found a partner yet? Because then
it's very open-ended.
It's very open-ended, and then it's just like, oh yeah, but my partner's in the bathroom. Basically, I kind of give them an out. If for some reason they do feel uncomfortable to train with me, I'll never know, and that's all I care about. I don't want to know if someone feels uncomfortable training with me, so I almost give them an out to say.
By giving the very open-ended, you have a partner. Number one, I can say my partner's in the bathroom. Number two, I can say I'm not going to roll this round.
And I'll say this is for women, but it really isn't just for women. It's for anyone. But when we talked about those smashers earlier, right, and we talked about the emotional people who are emotional rollers. You have to find a way to neutralize them, to neutralize these kind of aggro, we call them aggro egos, right?
Aggro egos.
Yes, who just roll and go a little bit crazy, and you can tell it's based in this like sense of, it comes from insecurity. Mm-hmm. It comes from insecurity, and how do you neutralize that in the middle of the roll, aside from just going through and feeling like you're in a blender for 5 minutes and then being like, God, I didn't even feel, and then sometimes you get even emotional too, because they're getting emotional, and now we're both emotional, and now I'm really upset because I'm just crushed on the bottom of this.
The funny part is, even though this video is designed to rolling with the opposite sex and try to make that connection and limit the barriers there, I just kind of always find myself making the connections back to two guys rolling with each other.
Of course, yeah.
So neutralizing, I roll with the women too, but I'm just saying neutralizing aggro egos. You mentioned something about the aggro ego, someone who gets amped up during a roll. Why are they? Insecurity.
Yes.
Insecurity about what? A man's insecurity when rolling with a woman, in this particular example, is insecure that he may not be able to defeat her as he is supposed to be able to in the eyes of his own or his coach. You see what I'm saying?
Sure.
In other words, not upholding what he thinks he's supposed to uphold. A lot of guys, when they roll with a woman, they think that their coach is going to get mad if they can't beat the woman, so therefore they have to go aggro to defeat the woman. Now, a woman also get aggro sometimes when rolling with men, the same way a small guy can get aggro rolling with the big guy.
Yes.
And the women who get aggro rolling with men, why is that? Well, it's because their fear of not being a good enough training partner for the man. So what do? They start getting all freaking crazy with it, and they roll like even disregarding their own safety and just like doing crazy things and using all their energy and getting emotional during the roll and aggro. How do we neutralize it? How can a man neutralize the woman's aggro ego and feeling of insecurity and need to go crazy?
Yeah,
and how can a woman neutralize that for a man?
Neutralize that for a man. Exactly.
Understanding the core of those aggro egos, one tip that I often use with the women, because I often roll with women and I feel them getting all riled up. Yes. And one of the most effective tips for me is to, besides creating opportunities and giving them a technique, taking a technique, and just creating that back and forth, even when I do that, sometimes I feel like praising a particular technique and giving credit to the woman helps a lot. Or the training, sometimes I go with the blue belt and he has aggro ego issues too. So it's like, it doesn't matter man or woman. I'm just saying sometimes you go with someone who doesn't feel sufficient for you, by giving them some credit and by praising their technique, what do they suddenly feel? Oh.
Okay, they recognize.
They recognize, and I'm okay, and I'm not as bad, and I'm good enough. I'm good enough for them. He obviously, if he's praising me, I'm good enough for him.
Yeah, and it also gives you a little bit of a sense of like, all right, this isn't me against him, right? If he's willing to praise something that I did, or oh, nice sweep, that was a good one. You're like, all right, maybe we are on the same team,
right.
and we're working towards a good role together, and that's all it is.
It's a united.
It's not
him
versus me, and whoever battles in the end.
Now in reverse, the exact same thing is
yes.
true. So let's say this guy is going smashing, going aggro with
yes.
Eve, and she's rolling. What do you do?
This is one of the most important things I think that I've learned, and Henner has kind of given me advice on this, is that you almost have to give them an opportunity to give back to you. So almost acknowledging, because if they're a more advanced belt and they're bigger and stronger, it's okay to acknowledge that. And so maybe, they caught you in something and I was like, oh my gosh. So you can even, in the middle of rolling, say, that was a great reversal. Can you show me how you did that? Or can you explain that to me?
Right.
So now we're in the middle of sparring where it's like, like crazy emotional, like they're just trying to demoralize. And then all of a sudden you say, hey, that was really good, whatever you just did. Can you show me how to do that? And what is that saying? Basically it's saying, I know that you know. I respect that you know more than me, and now I'd actually like to learn from that.
Which deflates my
yes.
insecurity balloon, because I'm here thinking, man, I gotta prove myself against. And she says, hey, Henner, how did you do that? Or hey, man, how did you do that sweep or that submission? Or how did you get my back? Whatever. And I'm thinking, okay, so she clearly recognizes that I know what I'm talking about.
And it gives them a little sense of like, oh, I can help somebody else, or I can teach them something. You know what I mean?
Once again, going back to what? Creating a united effort to make it a productive role.
Yes.
That the same end result of a man giving a woman a helpful praise or whatever, a woman asking, or a less knowledgeable training partner asking a more knowledgeable training man or woman, asking a more knowledgeable training partner who's trying to impose himself, just say, hey, how did you do that? Or hey, I feel like I messed up right there. What could I have done differently? Boom.
Yes. Now, the last piece of advice that I have to give to women, because I've seen it happen, I've almost done it myself, so I totally understand where this has happened. And the problem is that sometimes we shoot ourselves in the foot as women who train, because while we don't like the smashers, right, and we hate that, sometimes guys just only use strength, it's part of our learning, it's part of our growing. And guess what? Sometimes we're going to get smashed on. Sometimes we're going to, go against guys who use all strength, and literally we'll just be hanging out in the bottom of someone's side mount. They're just going to be crushing us. And that is part of our journey too. Now, would I want that to happen for every single role for the rest of my life? No. But if we take that experience and instead of just saying, all right, he's not my favorite training partner, that's okay. I can just not try to avoid him next time, right? Instead of doing that, and sometimes women, they just kind of act out, or they get really emotional about it, or they make a scene, and they go, and they like kind of complain about it and whine.
Men too.
Yes, and men too. So basically, and then sometimes what happens is that because the women are getting frustrated during the role, we get emotional. And then we get a little aggro. And then what happens? Because we're getting aggro, now they're going aggro. And now we're going wild out, and then they're like, so it becomes, and then we get upset because they overpower us. And
then they're like, oh, he's a smasher, why are you using your strength against me?
So when maybe from at the beginning, if it started off as like kind of a natural flow with technique and just movement and, a little bit of juice here and there, maybe he would have matched us equally. But instead, because sometimes we get a little too crazy and a little
for better or worse, it got to the point where he is aggressively using his energy and submitting you and defeating you and overcoming your resistance.
But the worst thing is to just kind of, act out or act like, oh, he hurt me, or, sometimes we kind of, we overreact, and maybe
out of frustration that you didn't have the answers for the challenges you were in.
And really what maybe just happened is that he overpowered you, or he he had better technique or whatever it was.
Yes.
So we can't do that to ourselves, because all that's doing is making men not want to train with us even more. So we have to, even when we are not enjoying the role, we have to just kind of suck it up, and then, you know what, we can tell our friends, or you can tell yourself.
You can just say, I don't want to roll with him anymore.
Mental note, I don't think I'm going to roll with this guy anymore. He's not my favorite training partner. Totally cool.
But what you don't want to do is to blow it out of proportion
and
say, oh man, this guy's crazy, you know what I'm saying? This guy,
talk about it, everybody,
God, he uses so much strength, he has no technique, and you all of a sudden, because now what is everyone else thinking? If I roll with her and I submit her, she's going to basically tell everyone that I have no strength and I have no technique and I'm pure strength and I don't know what I'm doing. In other words, don't be a crazy whiner, straight up. And this is not women, this is for men also. And there have been guys who come to me and be like, hey, oh my gosh, the guy over there, this and that. gosh, like a blue belt taps a purple belt, or a blue belt taps a higher level blue belt, 1 or 2 stripes higher than him. And the smaller guy who's 1 or 2 stripes higher got defeated because the guy was so strong, and whatever the reason is, or technique or whatever, and he got frustrated. So he got emotional about the fact that he didn't do as well as he expected to. But at the end of the day, you just got beat. It's okay. Get up, go do it again. You know what I'm saying? You don't have to go blow it out of proportion and make it seem like that guy did something wrong. No. And at the end of the day, even if you got submitted and defeated by someone who outweighs you by 50 pounds and smashed, so to speak, guess what? That's productive. You need to experience that sometimes to know where you need to work towards to eventually be able to overcome, because guess what? On the street, he's not going to be gentle with his weight. Men and women. This guy's not going to hold his weight back and, not put his hairy chest in your face, or not grab you in a headlock, with his sweat or smell or whatever. Like, it's going to be crazy. So the point is, you eventually want to work towards those. So when you have an opportunity to train with someone who is less than desirable, rather than condemning them and, blowing it out of proportion, trying to embarrass them to make yourself feel better, instead take it as an experience, as a learning experience, and maybe hold off on training with that person every week, and just know that they go in a different category, but be very careful not to blow it out of proportion. Not because, although that might protect your ego in that particular day and moment, guess what? It's going to put you on a blacklist for other training partners. They're going to say, wow, don't roll with him or her, because if they lose, they get crazy and they blow it out of proportion. Whether strength or technique,
now,
they can't accept a loss.
At the same time, obviously, if there is a consideration for safety, if someone just blatantly, unsafe and hurts someone, then of course you should say something, or you should talk to, the head instructor, or you could, you know what I mean? Like, you can pull them aside and say, look, I don't know if you meant to, but, even when I tapped, you still held on, and, I don't interpret that as safe. Then that's when you should.
Yeah, that's natural. If someone is squeezed beyond the tap, didn't give it time to tap, something very blatant disregard, we have to know, and we'll take care of that, no worries. The head instructors will take care of that. That's our job. But if it's anything less than that, and it's just a training, just he accidentally bumped this way or bumped that way, or put too much pressure here or there, and it was a sincere accident, be very careful how you judge that. Not for your sake or for his sake, but for the sake of the interpretation of every other person who's going to be amplified the message that you put out. And you really want to be careful with how other people interpret your training tendencies and your training reactions to, especially the less favorable ones in terms of getting submitted and this and that. But that's it, my friends. You don't want to be blacklisted by anybody. The same way the undesirables, get blacklisted. You can get blacklisted from other people not wanting to train with you simply because you overreact to losing.
And as women, I have to speak to the women specifically that we can't create any more barriers to men wanting to train with us. Than already exists. So we basically have to try to be the best training partners we can be, because we've got an uphill battle ahead of us, in terms of finding more male training partners that are willing to and open and train with us.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, the whole point of this video is to create more connections. And we're not pointing fingers at any particular person, unless there were a couple of good fingers that we pointed at some good people who are great training partners. At the end of the day, we're just trying to make more connections, and we're just warning you, and take it for what it is. You know what I'm saying? Take it for what it is.
And of course, there's going to be, there probably will be women and people who watch this and say, well, I want everyone to treat me exactly the way we would treat, anyone else or any man, and don't treat me any different because I'm a woman. But what's interesting is that might be true for some individuals, but the truth is we do not have, there's a reason why we don't have more women on the mat. And that's what we're trying to get at, is that if that were true, there would be more women on the mat. If no one cared and everyone should be treated exactly the same in terms of, training intensity and this and that, and men and women. It's, we just have to recognize that we need to make the environment exciting and fun for women to grow. And a big part of that is is making men and women feel comfortable training together. And that's what this video is really, the purpose of it is for.
Yeah, and we already said it in the beginning, but to wrap it up here, this idea that there's no demographic for whom jiu-jitsu is more applicable, more beneficial, more life-saving, and more useful than women as a whole. And, if we're not creating, training environments that are welcoming, friendly, cooperative, and conducted in a way that is safe and respectful for, men and women alike, where jiu-jitsu is not serving its most important purpose, is the way I'd like to say it. And there's no doubt that there is a natural awkwardness in jiu-jitsu. Normally in America, it's hi, nice to meet you, we shake hands, and that's pretty much it, And to say hi, nice to meet you, can I choke you? and then jump on their neck and be cross-choking them,
or like, okay, yeah, get in my guard and let's go. You know, it's just, it's not a
It's
natural...
like, let's just grapple on each other with our legs wrapped around each other. It's not normal to the outsiders. And even when you become an insider, it becomes normal because you see everyone's doing it, but it doesn't mean it's comfortable. And what I'm getting at is, in order for us to create more comfortable training opportunities for men and women and to develop our comfort in those uncomfortable situations, we have to first become uncomfortable. And what I mean by that is we have to take the initiative. Men have to take the initiative and be more open and more inviting and more eager to, you know, bring the women in and train with them and recruit them 100% as they would any other man. Even though it's not as comfortable as asking another man due to all the misinterpretations and the conceptions and this and that. Even though it's not as comfortable, even though it's uncomfortable, we have to do it in order to help the women develop comfort in the uncomfortable situation of being close in a real fight against a man.
Yeah. We need male training partners. We need male training
At the
partners.
end of the day,
we need you. So
if they ever expect to use these techniques, it's going to be against someone larger, stronger man. And they know that, and that's why they're there.
Yeah.
So we have to become uncomfortable to help create more comfort.
Yes. Now, at the same time, women, we always have to assume that no man in the room, and we may not even have to assume it, because sometimes it happens, that no man will ask us to train. So we have to take training into our own hands. We have to take our training and our progress and our growth. And so no matter what, you know, we have to say, no, even though it's more comfortable for me to just train with my one woman friend here for the entire class, even though it's more comfortable for us, we have to get out of our own comfort zones as well. And just pick a guy and say, hey,
great point.
Do you have a partner yet? You know, and we have to come out of our comfort zones as well. And it will help us with our training, with our progress, and hopefully help the environment of men and women training, you know, not so awkward and, you know, no misconceptions.
It's crazy because all the awkwardness only come from misconceptions that are totally falsified. That's what's crazy. We're all being held back by such falsities and such hollow truths, non-existent truths. And what's crazy is that we've only made this video so that every dedicated jiu-jitsu man or woman watches it and then reaches out and helps someone else.
Yes.
If everyone watches this, we're set, number one. But here's the key to its success. Every single person who's out there right now watching this has to assume that no other person of the opposite sex is watching it. In other words, if every man who watches this assumes that no woman has ever seen this, we take the responsibility amongst ourselves to be the ones to say, hey, my friend, to whatever, you know, new white belt or blue belt who just joined the Master Cycle, say, hey, come over here and roll with me. Let's try these techniques. And you're going to see her eyes like, oh, really? Me? Like, oh, this is amazing. You're going to have to overcome to make that happen. And if you assume that she doesn't know the protocol, then you won't expect her to come over here and make it happen. So you have to go get and make happen. And if all women assume that no men have ever seen this, then what does that mean? You can assume that all men still are plagued by the belief that they cannot ask you for fear of it being interpreted as hitting on you or sexual or whatever.
We forgive you.
What I'm saying is, if every woman assumes that all men are still plagued by that mindset, guess what? You're never going to train with them unless you also cross the line.
Yes.
And show us that that's not the case, and that you guys are not interpreting it that way, and that there's no fear, no concern. Oh man, you guys, the success of this video will only be determined not by the number of views. That you can see on the little count meter on YouTube, and that's cool. It will only be determined by the number of new connections and new training partnerships that take place between men and women all across the world. Okay? You guys, Jiu-jitsu, tens of thousands of academies, thousands of instructors, one martial art, one goal, collective growth, jiu-jitsu against the world. Women need it as much, if not more, than any one of us. So let's work together and make it possible for them. Clear?
Clear.
You guys might have seen me fidgeting with this ring the whole time.
He's still not used to it.
I still don't. I'm not used to the physical feel of it or the emotional responsibility. But I'm down for the journey. Much respect. Thanks for joining us, guys. We'll see you on the mat.